stopping the bloodshed in Ukraine. That was a message Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan sent as he addressed the 6th Cica summit in Astana, Kazakhstan. On the conference's sidelines, President Erdogan held meetings with several leaders, including his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, who said that Turkey is the most reliable route to deliver gas to Europe. Speaking during a bilateral meeting, Putin reiterated a proposal to make Türkiye a regional supply hub to transport gas to customers in the EU. But the main focus of the Cica summit, which brings together leaders from across Asia, was addressing economic and security challenges facing the continent. Speaking at a joint news conference with his host and Kazakh counterpart, President Erdogan said Türkiye will continue to support Kazakhstan's territorial integrity, stability and peace. For his part, Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev called Türkiye his country's most reliable strategic partner. And for more, I'm joined by Assel Tutumlu. She is a Central Asia Affairs Analyst and an Associate Professor at Near East University in Lefkoşa in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. And from Istanbul, Turan Gafarli. He is a political analyst who specializes in Turkic states. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Assel, founded in 1991, how effective you think the Cica regional grouping is? Is it fit to address Central Asia's economic and security challenges?
Well, before that, before the present summit, it wasn't really, it was, let's say, a dormant organization. And the reason for that, because there were other alternative organizations and that were available. And at the same time that conflicts were relatively local. So Cica was not very effective. However, in this particular summit, President Tokayev suggested to turn this organization into an official regional organization, which adds value to it. And since it has 27 members, and now with Kuwait, it will have 28 members, it will represent a sizable portion of Asia. In his speech, President Tokayev, for example, said that we actually have 90% of population of Asia in this organization. And as a result of that, I think for many actors, Cica is a kind of a new beginning that would enable countries to come together and design different projects that are Asia-centered. Mm-hmm. So I do foresee that in the future, this organization will probably have much more influence in comparison to what it was before.
So, Turan, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have met for the 4th time in 4 months. So what was the most striking message they have delivered? Were there any breakthroughs during the summit?
Of course, the direct talk between the Turkish president and the Russian president has been very, very vital for the whole world and the whole geostrategic importance of the matters regarding the latest developments in Ukraine. So in this case, the energy talks especially was a priority, as far as I know, because the offer of the Russians to build up a hub in Turkey to further send natural gas to Europe in expectation of the breakdown in the Nord Stream 1 has been welcomed by Turkish president. So I believe this new energy hub will create some kind of alternative for Russia, and it will be a good gain for Turkey as well. So that's why Turkish president's meeting with Vladimir Putin was very important in this time. And of course, another issue is obviously the food security, the grain and the other related matters, which is also coming handy when the two meet in the time, as you said, 4th time meeting. So it's more detailed right now. It's more on details. So natural gas and food security were the priorities.
So as said, President Erdogan has called for a stop to the bloodshed in Ukraine again and repeated his wish to bring Putin and Zelensky at the negotiations table. But we know that Zelensky says he would not negotiate with Putin under any circumstance. So how is that going to play out?
Well, we have seen that President Erdogan talked to President Putin for an hour and a half. And what we have heard from the official Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia is that they wanted to talk about Ukraine, but they simply ran out of time. So what we do assume is that possibly if Ukraine was mentioned, then the negotiation probably went along the economic lines, not only to talk about the gas hubs, but also to ensure that there is a stable supply of grain and fertilizers, as Turan just just mentioned, to countries of the south. And so here, I think President Erdogan is trying to carve that niche so that, okay, you may not necessarily talk about the relations, you may not necessarily have two countries set at the same table, Russia and Ukraine, but at least you can de-escalate. And I think there is a very important space for de-escalation that can be taken up and explored right now because of the nuclear threat, particularly according to the Times. President Putin announced that he may use tactical weapons.
Yes.
In the Black Sea, and that's obviously a big fear for many of the neighboring states.
So, Turan, do you believe there is still room for diplomacy, especially after Russia's attacks on civilian targets and that targeted Ukrainian cities? I mean, how have the latest attacks dashed hopes for a diplomatic solution to this conflict?
I believe there is also there's always room for diplomacy in any case, because this conflict, as far as it remains with the many belligerents in the world, it's still limited to one zone in Ukraine, and it's still not very speedy as Russians were calculated in the beginning of this year, most probably. And this is thanks to the diplomacy and thanks to the supply chain needs of the world. And obviously, we cannot deny the great role of Turkey in this matter, because with significant developments in the region, Turkey is also playing a growing role to sustain this diplomacy line between the West and Russia, and obviously vice versa. So there are still some channels to go out, and I believe the tactical weapons can change the course, but still, until that time, Turkey's role and obviously the other channels between Russia and the West will still give a room for diplomacy.
So, Assel, talk to us about the ongoing effects of Russia's attack on Ukraine across Central Asia. How concerned are these countries over the conflict? I mean, what's at stake for them in terms of energy and security?
Well, we have seen this very clearly, I think, in the agenda and the speeches of most of the Central Asian countries. So one of the most important things that President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, President of Kazakhstan, has been talking about is exactly the diversification of routes. And that's primarily the reason why Cica summit was so important for Kazakhstan, because of the opportunity to actually meet with with 50 delegations that joined the forum, to actually meet and try to negotiate and construct alternative supply routes, particularly since the Caspian Pipeline Consortium pipeline is constantly being used as a blackmail by the Russian Federation. And so Kazakhstan at least certainly needs alternative routes. And in this sense, having the supply chains through what we call middle corridor through Türkiye would be very important for all Central Asian countries, as well as the supply routes through Iran. So that is what is explored. In addition to that, the remnants of the war are actually also echoing in the border conflicts between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Russia has not been willing to actually put the people at the table.
So, Turan, President Erdogan, during his meeting with his Kazakh counterpart, Tokayev, said that Turkey will continue to support Kazakhstan's territorial integrity. And for his part, Tokayev called Türkiye its most reliable and closer strategic partner. Was this a subtle message to Russia? What's your take on that?
Of course, after the aggression over Ukraine, we all know that all border countries of Russia have their own specific concerns about their relations with Russia on the border. And Kazakhstan is sharing the greatest borderline. That's why it's very natural for Kazakhstan to feel some type of concern for its future, especially if we see the past examples of 1990s about the Russian minority settled in northern Kazakhstan. That's why Turkish-Kazakh relations have been in a very peak in the last 4 or 5 years. As far as I'm concerned, it's also related to the organization of Turkic states, the defense agreements between two countries, and increasing defense exports of Turkey to Central Asia. That's why it's very notable that Kazakhstan is also seeking for alternatives, and it's turning to the West, seeing Turkey as a relatable partner. which is always there. And it's not very surprising that President Erdogan this time got one of the highest awards of the Kazakhstan state.
Yes.
And it's very, very notable to see that how peak two countries' relations are going through from here.
So, Assel, many analysts have said that Russia's relationship has cooled since its attack on Ukraine, as many former Soviet states could face the same situation in the future. Has this gap of mistrust helped Turkey to play a greater role in Central Asia?
Certainly. And the reason why Kazakhstan and other Central Asian states have relatively legitimate fears, that's because politicians in Russia frequently allow themselves to have statements about the Kazakhstan being the fake state, Kazakhstan being modernized by Russia, and northern Kazakhstan, the lands of northern Kazakhstan should belong to Russia or belong historically to Russia. So obviously, these types of imperial statements are not necessarily acting well and are very disconcerting to all Central Asian countries. So having an opportunity not only to use the multilateral forum and different other forums in general to ensure security, but having strategic partnership and frequent meetings with alternative regional powers is very important for diversification and multivectoral foreign policy that Kazakhstan has pursued since the beginning, since the 1990s.
So now that Turan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan are so close to inking a deal on their long-running border dispute, is Russia losing its grip on the ex-Soviet states? I mean, has the Ukraine conflict distracted Russia from exerting its influence over these countries?
Ukraine's relations with Russia and obviously what's going on now in Ukraine is very, very closely related to the future, most probably, of whole of Central Asia or even like whole of post-Soviet region, because this is the first time since 1990s that Russia is directly engaging with another post-Soviet country in such aggression. That's why it can be a very moment for other countries to break down the grip with Russia in this very moment of the lowest, I say, influence or power of Russia on this region. But we should not forget that Russia's links with these countries is not just built on the last 10, 20 years.
Course.
It's like it's obviously a matter of last 2 centuries. So it's not very, very easy to just hold off from the Russia in sense of all cooperation areas, especially with economy, if we consider especially Kyrgyzstan's trade relations, and official language of Kyrgyzstan is also being Russian. So it's not very, very easy to go back. But I believe in this world of multipolar popularity of multipolarity, that all countries are seeking alternatives. And as soon as they find, they will most probably go on with that. They will most probably solve their problems between themselves that are related to the imperialist policies of Russia in the last 2 centuries.
All right, Turan and Assel, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.